Hey, this is Matthew Ellison, president at 1615. We are passionate about equipping the people of God for the mission of God. And one of the ways we do that is by providing Great Commission resources, just like the webinar you're about to watch today. We hope you are blessed by what you hear. If you have comments or questions, leave them right here. Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to another peer-to-peer gathering. I'm Matthew Ellison, president at 1615. And normally I would be introducing my co-host, Michael Van Heis, who's the vice president at Missio Nexus, but he's on sabbatical. So if you think about it, shoot up a prayer for him today, that God would refresh and encourage him for ministry. I'll be taking a sabbatical next year, looking forward to that. I think it's an important rhythm for ministry leaders to break away every once in a while, just to sit at God's feet and get perspective. And so pray for our brother, Michael Van Heis, that he comes back energized. I want to thank the Evangelical Council for Financial Accountability. You know them as ECFAS, for sponsoring today's peer-to-peer gathering and making it possible. I want to also let you know it would be helpful if you could turn off your video and also your audio to minimize any distractions. So today we're going to be talking about high-functioning missions teams. 1615 has been mobilizing and coaching churches for the last 20 years, and we've seen a big shift in the way churches lead their missions initiatives. For a long time, I think what we saw were missions committees, kind of ad hoc groups, big-hearted, well-intentioned, but not necessarily organized around a strategic vision. And we've seen this shift of those groups becoming more strategic, moving towards more of a task force model and organizing program areas around a church-based vision. And today's presenters are from Fellowship Bible Church in Topeka, Kansas. I had the privilege of coaching this church about 7 or 8 years ago. You're going to be hearing from Bob Stoller today. He is the Global Outreach Coordinator, as well as Jeremy Wynn, who is the discipleship, the discipleship pastor at Fellowship Bible Church. And what I love about today's presenters is they are practitioners. You're not just going to hear theory. You're going to hear from leaders who have made that transition from a reactive approach to a proactive approach, and they've organized a team around a strategic church-based vision. So brothers, I want to thank you for being with us today. If you could turn on your monitor, there you go. Thank you, Wyatt, for doing that, and also your audio. Brothers, I'm going to hand it over to you, and you're going to share out of your own experience some great ideas. I've seen some of them. Let me also mention right now that you're going to be at Shift this year in Orlando, Florida, which is Missio Nexus's annual Church Missions Leaders and Missions Leaders Conference. And you're going to be presenting in the church track. And so if you'd like to meet these guys live, they will be in Orlando. And if you have not signed up yet, I'm speaking to the audience here. If you have not signed up yet for the Shift conference, let me encourage you to do so. I don't know of any place where you can meet more like-minded, like-hearted people than the annual Missio Nexus Missions Leaders Conference. And now there's the Church Missions Leaders track as well. So if you haven't signed up, there's still time. I'm going to be there. We'll be doing podcast recording. In fact, Jeremy, you're going to be a podcast guest for the Mission Matters. So again, brothers, thank you so much. Can't wait to learn more from you today. I'm going to drop off video and audio, but I'll drop back in about 30 minutes, and I will allow this audience to ask you questions. Thanks, brothers.
All right, great. Thank you, Matthew, so much. So as Matthew shared, my name is Jeremy Wynn, and I am the Outreach and Discipleship Pastor here at the church, joined by...
Hello, I'm Bob Stoller. I'm our Global Outreach Coordinator, and at Fellowship Bible Church, that is a volunteer position. So I'm putting in 10 to 20 hours a week as needed to help with the things we're going to be talking about here, and been doing this for about 4 years or so.
So as we begin today, I mean, really, when Matthew approached us to talk about this concept of high-functioning missions teams, we were pretty humbled, to be honest, because as you'll hear today, our story of what this has looked like for us as a church, we're definitely still figuring out how to live this out and how to be a high-functioning team. So thank you for participating and hearing about our story and hearing about our model. But here's the deal. As we go through today, you are going to have questions because we're sharing our journey, our story, our model. but what we're doing may not 100% contextualize to your church and your area. So bring up lots of questions, because at the end, we want to talk about, you're saying, well, this might have worked for you, but here's our reality. Here's our situation. Here's what we're trying to wrestle through. We'd love to have some dialogue with you to help figure out, okay, well, how can we take some of our learnings and our model, and how can we figure out how to make some of that apply and work in your church, and then learn from you as you maybe even take it farther and have even more learnings than we've had as a church. The other thing I'll say is, as we go through today, we want to provide you every tool and resource that we have available to us. So one of the things you're going to see is a PDF with the notes from today. It's a fillable PDF, so you can do it online. And so I encourage you to take notes through the time. There'll be some blanks that you can fill in. The other thing is there's going to be other handouts that you're going to see, just of our model, of our leadership team, some of those things, just for you to see as some examples. But as we get into today, I'll just start by sharing really the why of our church. So the reason our outreach team exists, the reason that Bob and I wake up in the morning and why we're in our positions and our roles and all this, is because we desire to see the church mobilize to help all people find and follow Jesus Christ. You see that the picture that's on the PowerPoint there, that's a picture of one of our services at Fellowship. And, you know, that was one of our larger services. And we're thankful that God has entrusted us with a lot of people, but we want to see that same number of people mobilized in some way, in some role, to be a part of the Great Commission. So obviously Matthew 28:19-20 has been a pivotal passage for us as we look at one of those Great Commission passages. And we want to invite people to be a part of making disciples. And then we looked at Revelation chapter 7, verses 9-10. And it just talks about how, you know, when we get to heaven, we're going to see every tribe, every nation represented, and us all worshiping together. You that are on this peer-to-peer virtual time together, like, you get this. But just know that our why behind everything is we want to see our church in Topeka, Kansas, be a part of the Great Commission, so that we can see all the peoples of the earth up in heaven as we're there worshiping and celebrating together. We're excited to be on mission with God. And as we think about this, you know, we look at our story, and as Matthew talked about, where we were is not where we are, and not totally completely where we want to be. So when we think about what was within our journey, you probably, 8 to 10 years ago, we were well-intentioned. Man, we wanted to see people come to know Jesus. We wanted to do hard things. We wanted to be a part of stuff, but we were well-intentioned, but didn't quite have a focus and know how to get there, what to do. We also, that well-intentioned, it was really galvanized from a passionate few. So we had a few people that just couldn't fully understand why everyone wasn't a part of this. And we also, as part of this, we were reactive. So instead of knowing here's where we're going to go, we would get requests come our way, and we'd say, okay, well, this is a good thing. It's Great Commission work. I guess we'll choose to be a part of this. And, oh, what about this other good thing over here? And so we were in a reactive place. And then that led us to have this shotgun approach, where we were involved a little bit in a lot of places because we were well-intentioned. But thankfully, we've grown in our journey. And so, Bob, talk a little bit about kind of where we're at now.
Sure. Well, we definitely are so much more intentional now. We have a plan and a priority for our work. We'll get more into it later about every year, a specific focus, something we're really going to focus on for the next 12 months to really accomplish, improve, and mobilize in various areas of ministry, and making that a priority, and then evaluating it annually. We have the church has done a very intentional internal process to develop new leaders. They've done a series of training sessions with us with a goal to, they call it their big audacious goal, to develop 1,000 leaders, which I struggle to have faith for, but maybe it could happen. We'll keep praying for that. But as we see people that want to serve or want to help, we talk about having what we call an I see in you conversation. I see in you the potential. And it's sort of how I ended up in this job some years ago. Jeremy, I didn't know I was being processed, but it happened, and it worked, and I've developed into this role, so I'm glad for that. And we are proactive. As I started volunteering in this area, I I still work part-time at our local university, and I know how we plan and think years in advance, but I was just really honestly astounded as I got involved in meetings here and saw how FBC is thinking proactively. They're looking ahead, they're planning, they're always talking about the 6 to 12 months and where we're going to be. And I just really admire that and was honestly, I'll say surprised when I discovered that they were doing that. It was wonderful. And then focused, very intentional focus now. So we have at a minimum an annual refresher. We invite Matthew back to meet with us annually, refocus, evaluate. We do a survey to think about what's happened in the past, where do we want to go in the future. So it is certainly, we've come a long way from those early years.
Yeah, so we've made progress, but we're still definitely on the journey. And so as we look at this journey, we're going to kind of now give you a little bit of how did we make that transition and jump, and how are we continuing to try to become even more intentional, even more proactive, ultimately so we can be more impactful with the Great Commission. So let me walk through a couple of those things. So when we look at our model, one thing that might be, I don't know, unique or different or just something to think about is we don't just have one missions committee. What we've actually done is we broke it into two groups of people and have unique purposes for each one. So the first one, we have something called the Outreach Stewardship Team. So the Outreach Stewardship Team, it has an elder, it has deacons, and then it has our local and our global outreach coordinator, and then myself as the outreach pastor on there. And that stewardship team has three main things they're wanting to steward. They're in charge with stewarding our vision. So making sure that our vision aligns with God's word and that it's headed in the right direction, that it's focused, all those things. They're also in charge of stewarding our partnerships, because with our partnerships, we want to have deep relationships. We want to have people that are aligned with us theologically and where we're going and how we operate and all those elements. So we need to make sure that we're very strategic and intentional with who we partner with and how we partner with, because there's more good things and good partnerships than one church can be a part of. So we have to discern what are the people and the places that God is calling us into so we can be all in on those. And then finally, that team helps us steward the resources that God entrusts to us. 20% of what's given to the church is then used for outreach purposes. So it's a significant amount of money that stewardship team is entrusted to help think through how do we utilize this strategically. So I'm going to show a picture of what one of these meetings has looked like. We had a couple people missing and not in the picture, but you can kind of just get a little view of it, and then have Bob just talk a little bit more about what this team looks like and how it functions.
Sure, yeah, and we actually had this meeting just yesterday. It's a monthly meeting. We meet together, and we have an agenda where we, in part, the local outreach coordinator shares just some updates, things that are going on, and invites comments or questions, and I do the same on the global side. And then there's also usually a decision-making time where we talk about, we had a new partner request come in a couple weeks ago. So we review that. We decide, is this a good match? What shall we do? We talk about how to spend funds. We have some funds available for building churches around the world. We talk about that. I will describe a really interesting decision-making process that I hadn't seen before I joined this meeting. And as you arrive, people get a folder, and in this folder, there's a green, a yellow, and a red card. And so when it comes time to make a decision, we ask people to show their card. Green, obviously, being I'm all in. Red, I think this is a terrible idea, and yellow, I'm still processing a little bit. So this really helps, kind of in a less black and white way, get a feel for the room. And especially, some people are just naturally more verbose than others. So some of the more quiet leaders maybe haven't said much, but when they show that card, you get a sense. And of course, if you see a yellow card, there's lots of good follow-up questions. Tell us more. What are you chewing on there? So it's been an honor to work with this group, and they've helped us know what is it we're supposed to be doing, and as we'll get to in a little bit, then we hand that off for execution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so that's the stewardship team. Thanks for sharing about that, Bob. And then the next thing when we look at our model is our global outreach team, which we call the GO team, to kind of just shorten it, which I really like. And the GO team, they are like what Bob shared. They are the ones that practically help us execute things. So we're the stewardship team. They're helping steward things, and there's a lot of discernment involved in that and strategic thinking. And then the GO team, there certainly is strategic thinking, but it's a lot of, hey, here's the vision, here's the direction, here's the resources. Let's figure out how to make this happen. Now it's really on the ground, figure out how do we utilize this vision, this plan, these resources to mobilize the church. And so within that, we've got 5 key areas in which we've got key leaders on. And I'm pretty sure we took this from perspectives like this isn't new or revolutionary, but it's been really effective for us. So you've got someone that oversees mobilize, someone that oversees prayer, someone that oversees welcoming, someone that oversees our sending, and then someone that oversees our transformational trips and sending missionaries long term. So I'm going to show you a picture of an example of what this looks like and let Bob explain even more of what these times look like.
Sure, thanks, Jeremy. And our GO team meets once a month. It's usually a 2-hour meeting on a Thursday evening. We always start with a meal together, something simple, pizza or sandwiches or something, but a time to connect with each other and enjoy fellowship and build relationship casually there. Then I just wanted to kind of describe a typical agenda that we would go through. We make prayer a priority, so we always start with prayer and spend some time together praying for our partners, praying for issues or concerns that have come up since the last time we met together. And then we'll have a time, an equipping time. And this could be different things. It could be a webinar we watch together. It might be a report on a recent trip someone went on, something that would help the team just continue to grow and develop their own understanding and skill level in the work. We'll always have then a time for discussion items. We want to get their input and advice. For example, we have quarterly atrium events out in our church atrium where we will feature something about global outreach, and we want their advice and suggestion on what that should look like. There are other decisions that we consider, and those are always good times. And then we ask each of the area leaders, the Go, Mobilize, Prayer, Welcome, Send leaders, to give a short report. What's been going on in their area, what's happening, what do they need, are there things that we need to talk about? So that's a typical, what I would call a business type meeting. But then we also have other types of meetings that have developed just in the last year or two, as we've been able to grow these areas a little bit. In the sending area, I think it was 3 years ago now, we decided to spend 12 months with a focus on missionary care, because we had missionaries we were supporting, but we didn't feel like we were caring for them well, especially 2 or 3 people that were from our church, our church family. So we really made a focus on that. And what we do now, twice a year, I think now we have at least 3 missionary care teams, a group of 4 to 10 people that have a connection. In one case, it's a small group that's decided to be a missionary care team. In another case, it's just people that particularly knew this one family and wanted to connect with them. And we invite all those people in twice a year and have some kind of special presentation training for them to help them continue to grow in that, but then also to hear their stories, let them listen to each other. What are you doing? What was helpful with your missionary? And then going forward, we have a couple that's just getting ready to go on the field very soon. So we were trying to backfill when we first started this, but going forward, we are asking our missionaries, you need to build and identify your care team before you go. It's part of the process of getting ready. So that team is in place now, and we're happy with that. So missionary care, we have a couple times a year we do that focus, and then the other focus we have this year, our focus area has been in welcoming, because for some reason Topeka has become a a destination for a number of Ukrainian refugees that are looking for a safe place to be, and they just keep coming here. And so our welcoming ministry used to be all about international students at a local university, but it's just mushroomed this year as a number of Ukrainian families have come. And so again, we've they need so much, just the basic of, they need driving around, they need help with forms, they need help with school, just everything you can imagine they need help with. And so twice a year we're meeting with that group of folks, which is really our largest volunteer group right now. Again, equipping them, encouraging them, helping them in that work of welcoming refugees. So we have the, must be eight times a year, kind of a more business type meeting, then 4 times a year, a big, the larger meeting. And then we also have our annual refresh, our annual vision refresh, where we invite all of these folks in together to, again, evaluate what's been done in the past. We usually do a survey to get feedback. And yeah, that's, I think if I was to say the overall role of the global outreach team is basically to implement the vision that the stewardship team has given us. We want to provide next steps for the church to serve the nations, and then again, mobilize, try to get more and more people involved in that. As a member of the team, we're kind of expecting you to persistently pray. Prayer is a primary focus. Again, execute the details that need to happen. Lead and train other volunteers in their area. As part of the leadership training effort we mentioned, we're asking every leader to try to find an apprentice, someone that would come along beside them and learn along with them. So again, provide next steps, practical actions for the volunteers, and be involved in the initiatives we have.
All right, thanks, Bob. So let me go back and show you another picture. So this is our big picture model. And with all the things that we talked about with the stewardship team and then the global outreach team, I believe in your chat, there's going to be a link or a PDF with a description of what those teams look like. So you can see on paper how we've articulated, why they exist, what they do, some of those different things. Some of you are looking at this grid and like, this is overwhelming, I don't really care. Some of you are really trying to figure out, okay, how does this whole structure kind of work out and who reports to who and all that kind of stuff. So if you're one of those people, that's what this slide's about. And I believe we'll put a PDF with this as well. Basically, you got the elder team. We're an elder-led church. And then you've got our lead pastor and our pastor of ministries. And then you've got our different pastors or our team leads, of which I oversee the outreach and discipleship aspects. Then we have the outreach stewardship team, which stewards the vision and partnerships and resources we talked about. You got the go team that executes things. And then you've got Bob, who reports to me as the global outreach coordinator. Now, again, how your church is set up and designed, it's going to look different. But this is at least just to put on paper, let you kind of see how it kind of looks like and operates. And then you got the local outreach coordinator, Brody, who's wonderful. We're so thankful for him. He's got a local outreach team under him, and they've got a similar framework that they work within, like we do within the global side. So now let's talk about, if you're saying, okay, I'm starting to understand your model and what you guys kind of do. And I'm, I don't know where you guys are at with kind of where we were, shotgun approach, reactive, all this kind of stuff versus proactive. Like you're starting to figure out, okay, I think I kind of know where we're at in our journey and I see their model. So like, how do I get from here to there? What does that look like? So let's talk about the ideal process. So when Matthew said, hey, come do this training, I was like, okay, we've got to figure out how to codify, for lack of a better term, what did this process look like to get from where we were to where we are now, even though we're still trying to figure this out. So the first phase of this ideal process is build a cohesive leadership team. Now that language, it comes from an author named Patrick Lencioni. He's written lots of different books. The Advantage or 5 Dysfunctions of a Team kind of talks about this. But in essence, what it is giving enough time and attention to help build trust within your team. And so for us, it's really within the stewardship team, our staff team, the global outreach team, because if we don't have a cohesive team that trusts each other and trusts one another, then the go team might be saying, so why is this the vision? Like, why are we doing it this way? I don't see why you set up the budget this way. Like, I don't see why we did this. And that that stewardship team, like they don't really care about what we're trying to accomplish, or they don't understand our reality, or, the elders, they're just out of touch, whatever. So we have to give quite a bit of energy and time, whether it's at go team meetings, stewardship meetings, retreats, different things, to really make sure we're building a cohesive leadership team. But a small thing, like having a meal at the beginning of our go team, we're trying to foster relationship in that. So as you have relationships with people, you cultivate trust. And as we have clarity with things and we have things written down, that cultivates trust. Another part of trust is, being able to have healthy conflict. How do we have conflict about ideas? Because we are passionate. We are all passionate about what we're doing within global outreach. We feel like the stakes couldn't be higher, right? So how in the midst of cultivating trust are we also able to have that healthy conflict so we can be committed to the vision, committed to one another, hold each other accountable in a loving and a kind way so we can get to the results that we want to see. So in the ideal process, you're giving time and attention to cultivating and building a cohesive leadership team. The second step is creating clarity. So for us, we have a playbook, which we'll make sure you got a link to that. And for us, we have 6 essential questions that we want to make sure we answer, that we have clarity on, we are all on the same page. So from the go team all the way up to our elder team, we all are on the same page with, this is why we exist. These are our core values. This is what we do. These are our strategic anchors of how we make our decisions. This is what is most important right now. And here's who must do what. You think about just like what's most important right now. There's so many different things that we can do and be involved in that in the past we would say, well, let's try to give our best at everything. And ultimately what happened is nothing would really make the jump that we wanted to happen. So what we do now is on an annual basis, Bob talked about this, we have a vision refresher where we all refresh our vision and where we're going. And this is where we bring elders, pastors, stewardship team, go team, volunteers, everyone that's a part and is invested in outreach in some way. We're all in the same room together. And we really pray through and discern over this next year, what is most important right now. So one year it was missionary care. When we were in the midst of COVID, God gave us a unique opportunity that maybe we can't do trips right now, and maybe there's other things we can't do, but our missionaries who are coming home, we can care for them really, really well, and we can connect our people with our missionaries while they're here. So we said missionary care is our focus, and God grew that ministry and allowed us to really get a lot of traction in that. Now, we didn't stop our other areas, but we just said that one's the most important right now. Then the next year we said, we all believe that prayer is the most important thing right now. So missionary care is continuing to go and operate, and we're giving, energy and resources to it, and it's continuing to scale. But what's the most important thing that next year was prayer. And so we made sure we gave extra energy, extra attention to it. We talked about it at every one of our go team meetings. And then this last year, right now, welcoming is what's most important right now. Like Bob said, literally God is just bringing the nations to us with these Ukrainian refugees. And that's a whole nother story. But we said, God has really just put this in front of us, and we want to be available for what he's going to do. So let's make this the most important thing right now and see what God's going to do. And he has just incredibly blessed this. And so as we really pray and discern on a year by year basis, okay, what's the most important thing? We've seen that we've been able to get a lot of good traction with that. And so Matthew, he was incredible to help us with that playbook and help us answer some of those questions. And then we kind of just tweak the format a little bit, but it's been incredibly helpful for our teams to all be on the same page, know how we make decisions, how we operate. The next thing is develop leaders. So, we can have a cohesive team. We can know where we're going. So we're all rowing in the same direction, but we got to have people that are going to champion these different areas, because I can't do everything that's needed in local outreach and global outreach. And Bob can't do everything that's needed to mobilize our church in all these different key areas. Like, in order to be able to scale this thing and bring more people in, we have to be able to develop leaders. And so we've created a developing leaders process and play, and we'll include that in the notes as well. But really it's about having those I see in you conversations of here's what I see in you, of how this is your passion, this is your heart, this is your skill set, and we want to invite you into more. And as we invite you into more, why don't you watch how I do things? And then why don't you lead? Let me give you some feedback. And now why don't you lead and then bring someone alongside with you? And so that allows us to grow our capacity of leaders that are leading ministries and actually able to give more vision, more energy, more direction to be able to really expand the different areas that we want to see God continue to grow and expand. And then the final thing is mobilize the church. So as we have a team that's on the same page, both in relationship as well as in our clarity of our process and our vision of where we're going, we've got leaders that are able to lead the different things. We want to continue and mobilize the church, invite them in, get them plugged in with these key leaders, places, and have this big army of people that are all rowing and heading in the same direction. And so I presented this to our outreach team here at the church. And I said, hey, we're being asked to do this module with Matthew, so I pitched this, and they said, oh yeah, Jeremy, that's great. That's just not what happened at Fellowship. And I was like, wait, well, what do you mean? They said, well, that's the ideal process of what happened, but that's not actually what happened. And so if you're listening to this and you're thinking, okay, that sounds great, but like, that's not reality. That's not going to happen. That's totally great. These phases, they're not always going to be linear. It's messy, it's complicated, all this stuff. So I'm going to have Bob share, how did this process actually roll out within the global outreach team? Okay, so that was the ideal. Now let's go to the global team.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Now the real truth.
Now the real story.
The real story will come out. So at Fellowship, it started sort of before I was involved. It really we started with the create clarity area, which was really probably when Matthew came to visit and helped the group I was not a part of, get things started. And you mentioned the playbook. And I'm just going to briefly, the playbook's evolved year by year as time has gone on, but just really briefly, to something that you might spend hours preparing ends up something like this. Why do we exist? We exist to mobilize the church to help people find and follow Jesus among the nations. How do we behave? We have 3 criteria we wanted to be the core of everything we did: persistent prayer, deep relationships, and gospel transformation. Although that third one may be we may be changing that one here soon as we continue to grow. So why do we exist? How do we behave? What do? We provide next steps for the church to serve the nations through praying, sending, welcoming, going, and mobilizing. Then how will we succeed? By having a developed leader passionately facilitating every area in the Go team. We'll leverage our partnerships and deep relationships, provide clear next steps, and so on. So that work that was done early on to provide clarity of what is this going to be was really the thing that got it all started. Then really the next step was developing leaders, because I suppose in any church there's always a few interested volunteers, a few that are just, it's the nations, getting God's word to the nations is their passion. And I'll just briefly tell my story in that. For much of my Christian life, I don't know, the mission field was not at the forefront of my thoughts. I was very invested in small groups. I enjoyed leading small groups and such. But I think it was in 2011, we hosted a perspectives class here, and I just thought, that's something I should probably go do. And that was the beginning of a transition in my life. That then shortly after that, I was asked here at church to help co-lead a couple of short-term trips, and then I heard about this Go team thing, and I just thought, well, I'm just going to go to a couple meetings and see what this is like. And then eventually, because I was interested in short-term trips, they made me sort of the assistant person with short-term trips, and then the lead person moved out of state, and I was asked to take the leadership there, and then at some point, Jeremy got me to take on the whole role. So it was fine.
I think it was in South Asia.
Yeah.
You were in your element. You were experiencing what God was doing. And I was like, this is the moment.
Yeah.
All right. You in, you out. Yeah.
You want to be in? Do you want to start attending my weekly staff meetings? I mean, there's a selling point. In any case, that's really how it's all developed here. Interested volunteers got connected. They got jobs, but then those that are interested start looking for others to try to get them invited in. So people that are, and then the internal training program that we've mentioned, trying to get get that going. So clarity, then leaders sort of developed, and then we built the team. Again, as these different folks emerged, there were people that just, there are people that are just passionate about prayer. And it's just so obvious that, boy, if you would be willing to help us in our prayer ministry here, that would be wonderful. The same for welcoming. There are people that love to help organize trips. And so as the initial team kind of got built, there's turnover. Turnover happens. And so then we have to recruit and try to find, hopefully there's an apprentice already in place, but if not, there are other people volunteering that you can build.
So, Bob, just kind of speaking to that a little bit, is, because we weren't able to build that cohesive team first, what ended up happening is as we were in the creating clarity process, there was some conflict and borderline unhealthy conflict, because as people would share and be like, well, I think we should do this, or what if this is a core value, or what if we focus on this area? People are like, okay, do they really believe in the Great Commission? And are they really thinking they want to do it the right way? And there wasn't the depth of relationship needed to be able to handle some of these high stakes conversations. And so if you don't have enough relational equity, it just makes it more challenging. And so again, God worked through it, and we have our playbook and we have this different stuff, but because that didn't happen, it was challenging. And the people that we have on the bus now that are on our team are not the same people that started, but the people that now are a part of what we're doing, and as we onboard them and train them, they are aligned with where we're going. But because the order was different, we had bumps in the road for sure.
Yep, definitely. And then really the final phase, mobilizing the church, is really, it's sort of where we are now. We're not as mobilized as we want to be. We have some good things happening. Certainly this refugee ministry has brought a lot of new people participating. And one that actually surprised us, historically, for whatever reason, we've never participated in if you know, the Operation Christmas Child program Samaritan's Purse does. But a small group wanted to do that last year, and my goodness, we had 260 people respond to that. And it's such an easy entry path to get people to thinking globally. And so this year, as we think about that, that's just another thing we think is going to maybe lead us to a whole additional number of volunteers and potential participants to mobilize and do the work that we want to do.
Yeah. And before I give a couple other examples in our church, I just say that mobilizing the church, I would say in the last year or two, it's starting to become actual, but really it was aspirational for a long time, and to some level still is. The number of people on the weekend versus the number of people that are actively ongoing mobilized, there's a gap there. There's a big gap there. And so that's really one of the phases that we're really praying through and saying, God, how can we continue to be more effective to mobilize people? Okay, so let me just I'll give you one more, maybe two other examples. So our welcome team. So again, with our welcoming ministry, this is how we're welcoming the nations that God is bringing to us. So all of a sudden, what happened in Ukraine, this crisis happened there. And we have someone from Topeka that actually moved from Ukraine here about 10 years ago and is a follower of Jesus, connected with our church, and just started bringing refugees to Topeka. And the way the resettlement structure and stuff worked, like they were just able to come in and be a part of this. And so this opportunity was just right in front of us of, are we going to be available to say yes, to help figure out what does this look like to care for refugees? And so we said, okay, we're in. So quickly, the first thing that we did was, well, let's mobilize the church to figure out how to come alongside everything we're doing. So we said, hey, here's this need. Who wants to be a part of this? Okay, we got a lot of people that are interested, but we didn't really know, like, okay, so what are we supposed to do? So we had a gap between a lot of people that are interested and then what we're actually asking them to do. So in the midst of trying to figure out government side and our church side and partners, all this kind of stuff, we said, okay, let's create some clarity. So we had an offsite, had some strategic planning, answered those same questions for our welcoming ministry. And then we said, okay, now we understand our play. In order to be able to scale this, we got to develop leaders. We have people that are going to help oversee welcome teams and transportation and all, these different things. But before we had developed leaders, like we were trying to figure out and execute all this stuff. And so we were kind of running rampant and trying to figure all this out. And now we're trying to build a cohesive team where we have people that have been like, man, this tugged at my heart. I'm in, I want to help. but maybe they, at times maybe are a little more challenging to work with, or maybe aren't fully aligned with our playbook or where we're going. So now we're trying to, again, build trust within the team and within partners and all those types of things. So, wherever you jump in this process, like there's going to be realities you're going to have to navigate through. And our local team is another one. Our local outreach coordinator again brought up, well, my area was even different than that one. Said, okay, Brody, like, tell me, what did it look like for you? So again, for them, obviously we live in our own city. There's lots of needs. So our church has always been like, how do we help? Let's be available. Let's go. So we mobilized the church, then figured out, oh, we're doing all these different events. We can't lead all these things. So how do we get leaders? Okay, let's get people that are passionate about this. Let's develop them. And then it's, okay, so I know we live in Topeka, but how are we going to decide what we say yes to and what we say no to? So then we've been working on developing a playbook. And then now we're trying to build a cohesive team that is bought in and has trust to do all these different pieces. So again, your church is going to look unique. And so as you think through this, you're going to have to figure out, okay, we understand the ideal process, but where are we and what does this look like? So as we kind of begin to look at next steps and bring this to a close before we answer some questions, I mean, the first big next step, pray. Like, we really believe that the most we can do is pray, and the most important thing we can do is prayer. And so for us, persistent prayer is one of our core values, and we make sure that at the beginning of each of our staff meetings, the beginning of our Go team meeting, at the beginning of our stewardship team meeting, before we make a decision, like, we want to make decisions through prayer. We make sure that prayer is central to this. So be in prayer for your church family, be in prayer for future leaders, be in prayer for your partners, be in prayer for just everything within this process of being able to become that high functioning team who ultimately is impactful in the Great Commission. Next thing is just determine what phase you're in as you look at the ideal process, or maybe some of our different teams and what it's looked like. Say, okay, you know what? We have a cohesive team. Like, we have people that trust each other, love each other. We just don't have clarity. And so we need to figure out how to get clarity, like whether that's bring Matthew Ellison in, or, some other group to help you coach and get that clarity you need. Or maybe it's, no, we have clarity, we have vision, we just need to develop leaders. Okay, great. Like, you can take a look at our play, or get someone else to help get you to the next level, or maybe you just got to really focus on that and help make that happen. Wherever you're at, just determine, okay, here's what phase we're in, and here's some of the next phases that we need to be intentional to work on. And then next, continue to develop into each phase. So as you identify where you're at, continue to navigate through the next ones and figure out, okay, what's the next phase that's going to take us to get to the next level. And then finally, get coaching and help where you're stuck. We have been stuck so many times in different places, and we've gotten coaching from Matthew as well as from other areas, depending upon where we're getting stuck at. So it is not an issue, like, or a big deal to be able to just say, hey, I need help. Like, we've been there, we've been stuck so many times. Like, we've not been hesitant to ask for help. And it's been a huge blessing to have people that just have a little extra wisdom, little extra insight, little extra perspective to help speak into where we're at. So as we wrap up some resources, so I've talked about this, we'll make sure that these are, the link, and you have access to them. You're always welcome to reach out to us if there's other things that you want. We got today's notes. What does our stewardship team look like? What does our Go team look like? What does our playbook look like? What's our leadership development training look like? So finally, as we, wrap up, we're going to move to some Q&A, and I've seen some of these questions. They look great, but I'm just thankful that you guys are willing to be a part of the church with us to help figure out how we do this and how we can be effective, so ultimately we can see the gospel advance. And so I'm excited to hopefully continue to maybe get to meet some of you, whether it's at the Shift conference, or maybe we follow up from this and learn from each other, because there's going to be ongoing things that we're trying to figure out and we're stuck in, and all those types of things. So that's what we have for the presentation portion of it, but let's transition to some questions.
Yeah, Jeremy, Bob, I want to thank you guys. You put a lot of time and energy into preparing this. It's obvious to me. So I want to thank you for your generosity, not only to mobilize your own church, but to share those learnings with the larger body of Christ. And I have to say, I've been witness to the work of the Spirit at Fellowship. 7-8 years ago, we connected. big missions heart, lots of passion, but like you said, diffused, very shotgun, lack of clarity. I've watched the Spirit of God move through this process, and you guys use that word over and over again. And I want to emphasize that mobilization is a process. It's not an event. It's not a program. It's not a book. Books are good. They're catalytic. Conferences are good. Go to the Shift conference. It'll be catalytic. But conferences don't mobilize churches. It is the people of God led by the Spirit of God as they work through a process. And so I just have to tell you, thanks for letting me into your world and being able to see the ups and the downs, but to see the progress, and again, for your generosity. But I'm going to stop talking because we've got a lot of questions here. So Asher wants to know, how is 20% divided between local and global? So that's really practical, tactical. Can you answer that one?
Sure. Okay, so there is not like a strict formula in the sense of, okay, 20% is brought in, 10% goes to local, 10% goes to global. If you were to look at our budget, it is close to 50-50, and that would make sense. But as we annually, not only we have the annual vision refresher to determine what's most important right now, we also have an annual update process with all of our partners where we do monthly or quarterly or just ongoing, make sure we have a relationship with partners and are talking with them. But once a year, we intentionally have an update process. We really hear, where are your financials at? How is our relationship going? How is your effectiveness? Has there been shift in your leadership? Like all this kind of stuff. So as we go through that process, that does impact our budgeting process as well. And so we go through different phases and iterations and that type of thing. And ultimately the stewardship team makes a proposal that then the elders approve. And so within that, there's been years where we've just said, there are lots of incredible opportunities where God is moving in global. Like we need to be intentional to shift resources, or if we have an ability to increase resources and outreach, we should disproportionately invest it in global because that's just where we sense God's moving right now. And vice versa. We've had seasons where, man, God has opened up incredible opportunities to be engaged in this neighborhood or be a part of this initiative or whatever. I think we should use some of our extra resources to really engage there. So that process and that dialogue, again, it takes clarity to be able to know, here's how our process is, here's how we're going to make decisions, but it also takes a lot of trust, because someone that maybe really is involved in the local, if they hear, hey, we're looking to really invest some extra in global, they've got to really be able to listen and trust, okay, I can see why that's where we should give some of our extra resources, and vice versa. So again, we keep using the word, it's a process, lots of prayers involved, and we kind of year by year figure out where to delineate the resources. Anything else you'd add?
No, I think that was good.
Okay.
So this is not a question that's on the list, but I have to ask it. You've delineated between local and global. I know many, and I'm sure you do too, that they just lump it all together. It's all the same. What led you to the place where you said, let's make a distinction between local and global?
Okay. So that's a great question. And I feel like you're like, I think you would have a great answer for this, but here's what I'll say. First of all, when I came on staff, that was just how it was delineated. But I think practically, like we want to be able to be as intentional and focused locally as we can be globally. But at the same time, like when you look at theologically, we're called to love our neighbor, right? Both here as well as over there. But when you think about the word like missionary and missions, like there is a unique calling to cross-cultural work. And so we want to be clear of everyone is called to be a minister and everywhere is a ministry, whether that's your neighbor, like your literal neighbor, like right next to you, or whether that's working at the Topeka Rescue Mission or whatever. But there are some people that are uniquely called to be a missionary to do cross-cultural work. And as we look at the Great Commission, and again, Matthew 28, Revelation 7, and other places, like we want to make sure we're a part of making sure every tribe, every nation, every people is able to hear about Jesus. And so we want to be extremely intentional with the people that God's provided to us in Topeka, but not at the expense of not mobilizing our church to also be a part of the nations as well. So theologically, we want to be in line with God's heart, reaching all people, and practically we want to be able to be equally intentional, both locally as well as globally.
Yeah, great stuff. The church in Jerusalem in the book of Acts only focused on the neighborhood. That's where the Great Commission stopped. thanks be to God for Antioch. It was neighbors.
Yes.
It was both. So absolutely.
Yes.
What practical steps have you taken to mobilize the church? And I might tag on to that question there. What does it look like for a member of the church to grab onto these opportunities? What do those practical opportunities look like?
Okay. I'll do my best to explain them, Bob. Please add to it. So providing handles for our people to be engaged has been something that we are continuing to learn and figure out. And it was definitely a big gap that we've had historically. So you've got the big picture things, right? Of we have a website, like we have a global page. We've got ways that you can sign up and be involved that way. We have a pretty intentional and good Facebook page, social media presence, all those types of things. We do quarterly events where in our atrium, people are going to hear about some of the major initiatives, and it's very experiential. They can, walk through a prayer walk, or we've literally built a replica of a church in South Asia, or just things like that, where we make kind of the what feels far away kind of close. But those have only taken us so far. Really, the best way to mobilize the church is the personal invitation. The people that are part of your leadership team, the people that are already bought in, just reaching out to people that are already in their sphere of influence, that they know either already have a passion for global outreach, or maybe they're in line with God's heart and they just weren't aware of how to be engaged globally. And so they're just inviting them in to be a part of things. The other piece that goes along with that is, as we've done the what's most important right now, like through COVID, people just recognized, okay, there's a lot of things I can't do. What can I do? So missionary care, naturally, as we brought that to the forefront and invited people in and that type of thing, people are like, oh, we want to be part of that. As people on the news are hearing all about Ukraine and that type of thing, like that's stirred in people's hearts. So as we've made invitations, people are like, oh yeah, we want to be a part of that. So there's kind of, I guess, one element of just taking the momentum and the waves that God naturally provides and running with that. And then really the most important thing that we can do, prayer, but strategically to mobilize, is personal invitations in. All the other stuff is kind of like just a bare foundation that you can do, but it's not really going to turn the corner on how to mobilize people. And that philosophy that I'm sharing with you, I think at an ideation phase, our stewardship team, our global outreach team, everybody agrees with. But in practice, it's something that we are really trying to be intentional to hone in on, because people haven't fully bought into, the way we get more people mobilized is for me to personally invite people. That's something that we're continuing to pray and trying to keep forefront within our culture, because I think that's going to help really take us to the next level.
Yeah, I would agree. And we do try lots of things. So we have a month, the year we focused on prayer, one thing we did, we had a monthly prayer event before and after services that people were invited to pray for missionaries. We had signage, we had things, and you give the opportunity, you hope maybe you'll catch some interest, and you promote it, but that it didn't produce a lot of real result. That activity didn't produce a lot of result. On the other hand, as I mentioned earlier, I was stunned at the Operation Christmas Child activity, which is such an easy ask. It's a family activity. The only mistake we made is we didn't collect the names of all those people. We got 260 boxes back. We don't really know who they were, but they've taken a baby step into mobilization of thinking about the world and God's need for the world. So, but you're right. The personal ask seems to be the.
But to be honest, Matthew, I really believe that there's probably churches and groups that are on this call that honestly could coach us better on this. So that's really the phase that we're wanting to grow in, is the mobilized part.
Yeah. And I appreciate your humility. You are in a journey. We're all in a journey. But again, thank you for sharing what you have learned. I just want to undergird something you said. You used the word handles. And I think, if you're going to mobilize your church, and I know this is true of fellowship, you have to have heart-grabbing, compelling vision.
Yes.
People respond to that, and you have that. And then you have to provide the handles. You have to think about the menu of opportunities. What does it look like practically for someone to engage? But again, at the end of the day, those things are helpful. The best mobilization is person to person.
I was mobilized by someone. That gentleman to your right, Bob, was mobilized through personal invitation. And so I just think people need to hear this. It is person to person. It's called discipleship. We disciple people into this heart of God to reach the nations. And so I really appreciate that. There's no magic formula. All of these things are helpful. Clarity of vision, pathways for engagement, handles. But at the end of the day, it's the people of God, Spirit of God, and it's person to person. So thank you for that. Again, some practical questions here. Global focus. Where are you working and how did you determine where you want to focus?
Okay, so our primary focus area is South Asia. And that came through the process when Matthew came and coached with our church. A word that he used is, what are the divine serendipities that are already going on that may indicate where God's calling you to be a part of? And so for us, there's a couple of things. One, we had some excellent partnerships already in South Asia. We're talking 8 years ago now. That we said, okay, well, that's cool. We got some good partnerships, church planting, already working with the unreached with one of our partners. But in Topeka, Kansas, there were 300 families from not just South Asia, but from where those other partners that we were already working with were from. I mean, there's 4-ish major cities in South Asia. I mean, they happen to be of one of those 4 major cities amongst, 1.4 billion people. And it was just, we looked at that and several other things. And we also, the Joshua Project was huge in the sense of, we looked at a world map and they have green dots where people are reached and red dots where people are unreached, and like yellow, it's a scale. And when we pulled up the picture, South Asia was just straight red because there were so many of these red dots of unreached people groups that we just looked at this. And as we prayed and just continued to look and hear stories and stuff, we said, we feel like that's where God's calling us to. Now, South Asia is huge. So then we had to down of, what's going to be our kind of focus things that we're going to make decisions on of where and how to focus. But that's how that came about. And then I guess a secondary thing is we really want to continue to come alongside our own. We want to raise up our own to be able to be sent out by the church. And so whenever we have a missionary pathway process that we walk them through. And as part of the process, we ask them, would you pray about and consider going to South Asia and having that be where you go? Because that's our focus area. Now we have people that do that and they choose to go other places. Philippines or Japan might be 2 examples in our real world. We still want to come alongside them, even though South Asia is our focus area. Now God's moving in all kinds of other parts of the earth, but that really has been the place that we feel like God is uniquely called fellowship to be invested in, to be a part of.
Yeah. You mentioned that divine serendipity. Another question I will ask in the coaching process, and I think every church should ask this question is, and you alluded to it, who has God brought to our vicinity that might be a link to an unreached people group or a place around the world? And then also, where is God calling your church to be his channel of blessing? Every church has a God-designed finiteness, and you can't say yes to every opportunity. Where is God calling you to be his channel of gospel blessing? I think that's a really important thing to pray through and think through here. One more question here. We've got a lot of questions. We can't hit them all, but I want to be mindful of people's time and your time as well. But have you seen a change in the number and types of partnerships as you move to a more strategic approach? So how has being strategic affected partnerships?
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about the number first. So our number, when we first implemented this, it definitely decreased somewhat. You get to this place where you have a tough decision you got to make. You got to decide, are we going to only go where our focus area is, or are we going to grandfather some people in and keep some legacy missionaries? We kind of did a hybrid where we kept all those that fit within our focus. And then we kept legacy missionaries that either we had a deep relationship with or were just really effective and we really liked. And then the others we've transitioned off. So at first it decreased. And then as we've brought more missions awareness, our own have been being sent out. So that's increased our number, slightly. And then as our focus in South Asia has grown, as we visit there often and we network with people and we build relationships and we figure out, okay, this person knows this person, this connection. I think this really fits with what we're trying to do. We've grown our partnerships in South Asia as well. So so our partners dropped, and then now they've, steadily increased, but it's been always an increase that's strategic. Now, the quality of partnership, oh my goodness, huge. So not only as we've done this new model, do we have deep relationships with everyone that we partner with now, because we're on the same page and we're focused, all those types of things. But also we know what we want from the partnership too, what we want the partnership to look like. And so as we're intentional and proactive as we send someone, we know, hey, here's our process for sending people. Here's the different mission agencies that align with our values, our philosophy. And here's our expectations of the missionary. Here's our expectations of the sending agency. And then here's what you can expect from us. And so all that prevents us from having missed expectations, which breaks down trust, which breaks down relationship, which creates conflict, all those types of things. So it is difficult. I think difficult's the right word, to say no a lot, but man, the payoff that you get despite that cost is just immense, and it's just a huge blessing. So it's been much better.
I want to underscore something here. I think that's really important, and then we'll wrap it up again, keeping mindful of people's time. But the process you went through was essential to making some of those changes, because it gave a rationale for the change. I think what's disruptive and painful for missionaries when they get an arbitrary email or a phone call that says, we're done supporting you. You as a church have been able to say, listen, we did not arrive here randomly or accidentally. We went through a process of clarifying our purpose, where we were going, and this is how it played out. And when you said no to people, or you do say no to people, or you reduce support or stop support, you could point to a process and say, we went through this to arrive at this place. And I find that preserves relationships. It can still be hard. You use the word difficult. I think that's true. But I think there's an appreciation for the fact that, there was a season of prayer and exploration. And the other thing that you said is the depth of relationship. One of the reasons I hear from churches all the time why they can't say no to people who need funding is they value relationships. But what's ironic about that is they have no relationships with all those people they're sending money to. So focus and deep relationships are actually, they're connected. You can't have meaningful, deep relationships with 85 missionary units. It's just not possible. Hey, brothers. Wow. I've got some great feedback already. I love talking to you. I love the annual refresher. I love staying in touch. Of course, you can meet these two live if you want to participate. Hey, tell us just really quickly about your workshop in Orlando.
Right. Workshop in Orlando. Okay. So we're going to be talking about, if I remember right, Matthew, correct me if I'm wrong, it's how to send missionaries and how to mobilize and send them well. So we're going to be doing a breakout on what does our missionary pathway process look like, and how, as we've rolled it out, how has it worked? We're going to share again. Here's some of our learnings. Here's some of the things that haven't gone great. And then here's, as we move forward, here's what it looks like. There's a lot I could share, but the world of missions in some ways, it is shifting. It is changing. I mean, we're becoming a more globalized world. You've got technology, you've got, internet, you've got even America and how it's viewed different places is shifting. So in light of that, there's still a role for us as an American church to be engaged in the Great Commission and to send our own. We just need to do it strategically and in a way that really is helping get to the ultimate mission that we want with the Great Commission, and also a way where we're sending our best and we're sending people that are healthy and all those things. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. I hope it's beneficial for those that attend.
Yeah, and I've been a part of that journey of developing that proactive sending pipeline, so I look forward to it as well. So again, brothers, I want to thank you so much. Let me thank ECFA one more time, the Evangelical Council for Financial Accountability, for making today possible. And we talked about Shift. If you haven't registered, you're on today. I would encourage you to be there. There's a lot of great offerings for agency leaders and church leaders, and you can meet these two guys live and be a part of that discussion as well. Yeah. So, brothers, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for everyone for tuning in today. I'm Matthew Ellison on behalf of Missio Nexus and 1615. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, we hope you are blessed by what you heard today. To learn more about the ministry of 1615 and how we serve churches, simply log on to 1615.org. And by the way, Don't forget to like and subscribe.